Welcome to episode 2 of the Gufs, Circa 2020. Tonight, we are joined again by Goran from the Gufs. Thanks again for joining us. Tonight, our plan is to dig into Staring Into the Sun, the Gufs' first release. I'm going to talk about the history of the band, talk about how they met, and songwriting, and Goran being classically trained on piano, which we just learned earlier. So, Goran, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
So kind of dig right in, not to prolong things. So 1989, correct?
Yeah.
Take us back in time. Tell us the story. Tell us how you met. We've touched on a lot of different points, and as we kind of unfold this story, we'll touch on those. But from your perspective, 1989, college, playing soccer, how did this all happen? What was the magical trip? Start us out.
Yeah, I was classically trained, and my parents surprised me with a Baldwin upright piano. And from 8 to about 18, throughout middle school, high school, that's all I was doing. I loved Bach, I loved Chopin, I loved Mozart, all that kind of stuff, and it kind of led me into kind of a musical awakening in the 80s, listening to bands like Tears for Fears and all that early kind of 80s English pop rock. I started playing with Tony Luna, who's the original member of the Gufs. He was the lead guitarist. So in high school, which would be like 1984, I'm a freshman, and Tony's playing guitar and I'm playing piano, and we're writing this kind of Tears for Fears type of stuff. And he, behind my back, starts recording some of our sessions. And I remember one of our first songs was Ask a Thousand Men. And it was kind of cool. It's like, here we are, like 14, 15-year-old kids writing these Euro pop songs. And, Tony was a great engineer. So he would kind of behind the scenes record stuff, and then he'd bring it to high school without me knowing. And back in the day, we had cassettes. I don't even think we had CDs back then. So he'd bring a cassette recorder with a whole bunch of little audio kind of channels where he could have 4 different headphones.
A 4-track recorder.
Yeah, totally. So absolutely. So, and all of a sudden I walk in and like people are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you can sing. And, at that time I didn't really know that I could sing. I just sang, and, I guess the more you hear that somebody says that, hey, you actually have a decent voice, the more you start believing it. So that led into, high school battle of the bands type of stuff. So I was playing keyboards, and, we're doing Flock of Seagulls, and we're doing, the Bolshoi, Tears for Fears, all this kind of cool 80s stuff. And now Dan is playing bass in this band, and we were called Uniform of Youth. And all of a sudden we're winning Battle of the Bands every year, and we started doing our own little high school shows. And, that's what we did throughout high school. I was in choir, I was playing piano, I was singing. And, the more you kept hearing people say, oh, I like your voice, I just kept kind of singing. So when I get to UW Milwaukee, which is now 1987, I went there because I got a scholarship to play soccer. And it's really interesting because, I was throughout high school kind of like Olympic development. I was a decent soccer player. And a lot of schools thought that I was a year younger than I actually was, which is kind of interesting to me because the year that I signed to go to UW Milwaukee to play soccer in 1987, the following year, I get letters from Virginia and North Carolina, which at that time were like the biggest soccer schools. And if I would have gotten those letters the same year that I got the UWM letter, I probably would have went to North Carolina, which at that time was the best soccer school. And then I kind of think about that time where it's like, whatever accident or whatever, was happening out, up there, that made these schools think that I was actually, a year younger. if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have went to UWM, and then I wouldn't have ended up meeting Scott, our drummer. I wouldn't have fell in love with the Milwaukee music scene because, 87 when I get there, I'm playing soccer. I'm going out and seeing Pat McCurdy and the Confidentials, the Nerve Twins, and Bodines, and all these great bands. And I'm like, wow, what a cool scene. Sophomore year, Scott becomes a freshman. He goes to UWM to play soccer as well. We end up rooming together, and it's like, we love the same bands. I'm like, wow, I play keys, and he's like, wow, I play drums, and I'm like, well, my brother Dan plays bass, and Tony plays guitar. So we start this band. 88, I think it was the fall of 88. It wasn't the Gufs, it was China Cat Sunflower. And we played a couple shows, played one of the biggest shows that I remember was playing down at the Unicorn downtown. Gus at the Unicorn always took good care of us. And, we'd sell it out because we'd have all the college soccer players come in and their girlfriends. But the only problem was that as China Cat Sunflower, it's a Grateful Dead cover band. So we'd have people coming that wanted to hear Grateful Dead. So they'd be like heckling us, like, play Grateful Dead. But we were playing, I'll Stop the World and Melt with You, and, stuff like that. And then we started sprinkling in some of our own originals. And, as we were kind of writing, songs like As I Look at Staring into the Sun, Under Breath came close around that time. Staring into the Sun came close around that time. Looking at the CD. And this kind of, led into 89 when we realized that Tony Luna wasn't the right guitar player for us because he was always more concerned about how things sounded. He always spent more time he wanted things to sound great and less about the songs. And back in the day, we played, a handful, of covers and maybe just a sprinkling of a new song. And we'd introduce a new song every show, and we're playing like places like, Celebrity Club and all the cool places on the East Side. I forget, the Boardwalk. That's another place that we kind of played, and we'd start selling those places out, and then all of a sudden we'd start playing more of our own songs and less of the cover songs. And when we hit Celebrity Club in 89, that's when things really started taking off. So that's kind of like what brought me, from being an 8-year-old to a 20-year-old up in Milwaukee. And, Morgan fell in right at that time, right when we became the Gufs. And
so how did Morgan find you guys, or how did you find Morgan? Because that is such an integral piece to your sound, right now.
Yeah. So we knew the writing was on the wall with Tony because Tony wanted to be more of our sound guy. And I remember one time, Dan and Tony would be driving up from Indiana. We'd be playing shows in Milwaukee, and Dan, being a 16, 17-year-old kid, having the time of his life, getting into bars, drinking beer, playing bass, and China Cat Sunflower / the Gufs. But we knew Tony was more into how things sounded and less, into the sound of the band. And I think the final, the straw that kind of broke Tony's back was we were at UWM, and he gets his car towed, and he's like, I'm done traveling up here from Munster, Indiana, and this and that. And we just heard through a friend. I remember a friend of ours, Jason Dobiash, who was a video guy / musician. He knew Morgan, and Morgan was in a band at Marquette called Trainwreck. I think it was called Trainwreck. And we decided to go scout him out. So we went to a Marquette bar and scouted out Morgan. And then I remember we jammed with him one time and asked him to be in the band. And he said he was floored. He was like, are you kidding me? Absolutely. Because at that time we were already starting to make a little bit of a name for ourselves. So Morgan came into the band in 89 and helped really, cultivate the sound of Staring into the Sun. Because when you look at that album and you listen to it, it's REM, it's the Canals, it's all that kind of college rock Guadalcanal Diary that we were listening to, Toad the Wet Sprocket.
So I,
Um,
I have to circle back to this. You kind of explained your influences, but um, give us an idea. So we go to, let's say we show up at the Unicorn. It's 1988.
mhm.
Cover songs. I mean, what are we talking about here? When we think of the Gufs, before the Gufs, um,
We played some really silly ones, like remember like Louie Louie.
yep.
You know, we did
Oh, yeah.
I'll Stop the World and Melt with You. Um, we did when Morgan started playing with us. We started doing Driver 8 by REM. You know, we'd start playing songs like that, and then we'd start sprinkling things in. And at that time, songs like Contradictions, those were songs that were written almost before the Gufs, because we were kind of writing that stuff, Dan and I and Tony, in high school. So we have early tapes of Contradictions, um, you know, which ended up what on Circa.
Circa 89.
Yeah, totally. Which was the first songs that we were really writing, but we just didn't think they were good enough to be our first effort. Um, and when I look at Staring into the Sun, it was such a huge record for us because it really took our following from 50 people to all of a sudden like hundreds and hundreds of people. And I remember Mladen, our manager, who's my older brother, Dan's older brother, our older brother was managing the band. He's like, "We're past cassettes. We got to get in this thing called CDs." He's like, "Let's put a CD out." And it's like, we put the CD out and things just blew up. And then all of a sudden Celebrity Club turns into Shank Hall, turns into the Majestic Theater, it was just kind of crazy. But yeah, we were playing silly covers. We were doing some silly jams and, just trying to fill time because we didn't have enough material. So
when did you record Staring into the Sun?
Staring into the Sun was 89.
89.
Yeah.
So 89. So you're playing, you're growing a fan base, getting away from covers. So you've got 12 solid songs, maybe 15 to 20, because obviously a lot of those bled over, as we just talked about, into Circa 89.
Mm-hmm.
So where did Red Submarine come from? So that is literally...
it's just a line from that song, which I think is one of the best songs off that record. Yellow cars, red submarines, green gas, blue skies.
Yep.
All my dreams. I don't know. We just thought it was kind of cool. Red Sub Records, and that just became our imprint. And Scotty was always our creative. He did all the T-shirts and the designs and the album covers. So that just became our little imprint.
I mean, that's it's kind of interesting how things kind of worked out. I mean, as we've said, Morgan transitioning in. We'll get into that in the next episode because I think there's a lot of things where he started to really kind of define your sound and discover what he was all about. And maybe we can get him to join us here. But so talking, I guess, moving on from here. So you're starting to play at bigger clubs, starting to play Majestic. Things are growing. How does this transition into Songs of Life? I mean, as we're moving along, I mean, what's the fan base developing? How are you seeing the Gufs starting to grow as a Wisconsin-based band?
We just started taking ourselves more seriously, so we want to start writing more serious songs, which Songs of Life, I think, was our more serious attempt. And as I'm looking at this actually came out in 91. All those songs were kind of written in 89, 90, but we put it out in 91. And I think Songs of Life then comes out a year or so later, 92, 93. But when I look at that early stuff, like Songs of Life, to me, I love listening to that record. We started getting a little bit more moody, a little bit deeper. It's tough being a 20-year-old kid and having a good life. I came from a good background. The guys came from good backgrounds. We were just playing music to have fun. So as you listen to bands like Toad the Wet Sprocket and you're trying to be as cool as Toad the Wet Sprocket, or you're trying to be as cool as REM, um, you just keep evolving. And then as I learned more chords than just a D, which under breath was kind of funny, which is one of our most defining songs, but it's based off of a chord that I only knew how to play. So the whole chord's based off of a D. It's funny because with the band, I didn't want to play keyboards. I wanted to play guitar. I just thought I'd look cooler holding a guitar. And
What about a keytar?
not, I tried that for one show. It wasn't very good. But when you hold a guitar, and at that time, college rock was very guitar driven. So Songs of Life was just the next evolution. And I think it was a cool one because it was more moody. It was more deep. Songs like Kiss the Sky, Lay You Down. I mean, then Life Sweet Sound, which is, probably to this day, one of the, biggest songs that we had at that time. And a song that, when we got signed, the, VP of Atlantic said, you guys got to record that song because he heard it live. And it's funny because it's a song we don't play because we just don't play it well live. There's certain songs that you play well live, and some that you don't. And we just never played that song well live. So we tended to stay away from it, but I know the fans love it.
So I got to go back to this because you've mentioned their name a couple times. And I did do my research and tried to find the actual article this came from. I remember, this is years and years ago, you had said that there was a question that I think was posed, what do you want the Gufs to sound like? And your answer was Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I was always curious as to, so you bringing them back up a couple times. I mean, what, not to make this about Toad, but
yeah, we can make it about Toad.
Well, I mean, they're fantastic as well. But what about that sound? I mean, because there are some influences in your music that if you play, you listen to the Gufs, you listen to Toad the Wet Sprocket CD. There's certain things that are, very similar. But what about Toad? I mean, I just like I said, I wanted to find the article, I couldn't.
Toad to me at that time was just cool. Like they just sounded like a cool version of all the college rock that I was listening to. Even REM had goofy moments, but Toad was just cool all the time. His voice, Glenn Phillips' voice, I just loved it. It was raw. The music to me, struck, blue chords in my soul, E minors and A minors. And, it's just, I don't know. I just loved everything about them. And melodically, they were awesome. Lyrically, they were deep as hell. And, he was a young dude writing all those songs. 17 years old, I think, when Bread and Circus came out. But I probably listened to Bread and Circus at that time 1,000 times, a week. That's just all I would listen to as I walked on campus. And, I remember like the Chosen, we are the chosen. I ripped that off of We Sing the Nightingale Song of Life. It's like stuff like that. It's like we just wanted, or at least I did. I wanted to sound like him, and I sang nothing like him. And I was mad that I couldn't sing like him. And I just think as things progress, we started getting a little bit tougher sounding because that's what music was doing. But if there's one band that I love and that I've probably seen just as many times as you've seen the Gufs, it's Toad the Wet Sprocket. I would travel to go see them. And
yeah, they are fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean, live is a great show as well.
And they're simple. They've stayed simple. The Gufs kind of got complex as time goes on, and I like how we kept on kind of reinventing ourselves. But Toad stayed kind of simple, and even when you listen to their new stuff that they're putting out now, it still sounds like Toad from back then.
Well, and that ties into the next question. One of our previous sessions, you had mentioned writing songs as a 20-year-old kid versus now, and how at that time, not as an insult, but you basically, it's stated for paraphrasing, we had no idea what we were doing. You know, and how has, so you look back at Staring into the Sun versus Hero, which just came out.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the whole catalog of music, the whole scope of the work, I mean, coming in and writing Under Breath, which, as you stated, is still basically a very trademark song for the Gufs. You have that, but you also have the rest of the album. You have, you know, transition to Songs of Life. I mean, how has this evolved in your process? And like I said, we've always talked about how the Gufs have continued to evolve, and what a big part as a fan and a listener that is. But when you look back and think about Staring into the Sun compared to now, I mean, what's your honest, so your Yelp review of Staring into the Sun these days?
I mean, it's innocent, it's sweet, it's cute. I don't know what I was singing about. Like those songs don't tug on my heart. They kind of are like songs that, you know, a lot of it I was singing about things that I was learning in school, classes that I was taking. You know, Under Breath was a song that I took with Rob Lucky, who was we called the fifth Guff because he was the guy that had the Suburban. Yeah. So when I think about like you know, Staring into the Sun, it's an innocent record. Like it's sweet and it's sincere and it's naive. Because when you're 20, you don't have life experiences. You don't have like all these things that, you know, heartache. And I came from a good family, so it's like I didn't have a lot of you know, sad times. It's hard to write about things that you don't know about. And at that time, you know, I was writing songs about things that I was learning in school. And in school, we were taking a lot of classes. Believe it or not, you know, I think back of my UWM days, some of my best moments as far as what I took from that time was taking classes on the Holocaust and learning about all these life events and things that happened to all these people that weren't happening to me. So even a song like Under Breath, it's not a personal song. It's my take on what some other people might have felt. And as you age and you progress, you start feeling things, and you know, you start experiencing heartache, and you start experiencing loss, and you start experiencing hard times. So when I look at the progression, it's a maturity level, but it also comes down to a craft. The more you do something, the better you get at it. Mm-hmm. In anything in life. And when I look at myself right now as a songwriter in the last 8 years that I've spent in Nashville, you know, writing songs, trying to write songs for other people, like a lot of the stuff that I put out, Airports and Alibis and Under, you know, Nashville Sky, the Goran stuff is my attempt at writing songs for other people. And I've written a lot of songs with the intention that other people might sing them that I would not sing. They're not me, but you learn what a good title is. You learn what a good story is. You learn, you know, what a good melody is. A lot of the earlier stuff, you know, we would jam. We would sit in a room and jam, and it'd be a cool riff, like Crash. It'd be more of a vibe. You know, it's like Morgan, and then all of a sudden we'd be like jamming, and I'd be like singing like, you know, and you start making up words, and you're like, what is it? What is it? Oh, well, that was kind of cool. I just said crash into me. And then you're like, what was that about? You know, and then you kind of back into the title of the song. Whereas nowadays, when we wrote Hero, Dan and I wrote it over Zoom, and I said, hey, I got a cool idea called Hero. And you start with the idea. So the songs back in the day were sweet and innocent, and I think we stumbled onto some cool songs, but a lot of them aren't that good. I think we started getting good when we did Holiday from You, because at that time it was heartbreak. It was deep, raw feelings, and we were working with a producer that helped get a lot out of us. You know, so I listened to the early stuff as being kind of sweet and innocent, you know, and I can see why people liked it. But when I listen to the new stuff, I'm more proud of it. Holiday from You, Different Sea, you know, even the single that we did, Save Me, which I think was kind of cool, and Hero, and now we're working on another song called One, where we have a story to tell. So the older you get, the wiser you get. And I think, as time passes, you learn your craft. And I think now I'm actually a decent songwriter. But back then I just stumbled and tripped onto some sweet ideas that resonated accidentally. So,
Yeah, but you can't discount where you came from. I think, at least from my perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong here, um, there's such wild mood swings and movements between the CDs.
mhm.
Staring into the sun, moving into Songs of Life is a little bit more mature.
Yeah.
But then you look at, Circa 89 was a great CD as well, but that's kind of a wrap up of where we were. And then you jump into Collide in the Atlantic release. And I agree. I mean, Holiday from You is a total different animal. And so is A Different Sea. But, it's such a great progression to go back and listen to, which I've been doing extensively. My wife said, "Do you listen to anything else these days?" I said, "No." I said, I got to get somehow inside his head,
Yeah, totally.
you know. But it's one of these things, and it's such a. If you really sat down, if you had hours and hours to waste, like I've had these past couple of weeks, to literally listen from start to finish, it's an incredible story to follow. It really is, and you see these things evolve, these sounds, and like we'll talk about later. But it's you're right. It is innocent. Staring into the sun is a very, but it's not a bad opening, album by any stretch of the imagination. To get into things lightly, it's a very good start. At least in my opinion. That's my Yelp review of it. So,
Well, I mean, it's got to be because it brought people like you in, and all of a sudden, 50 people turned into 100, turned into 200, turned into 1,000, turned into a few, and um, the story started, and you guys helped kind of bring it to a different level. So obviously, it had to be good enough to resonate. Just as an artist, you're going to be the most critical of yourself, and if I'm going to listen to records, I'm going to go back and listen to, Holiday from You. I might go back and listen to Songs of Life. I probably won't listen to Staring the Sun or Circa, Different Sea. And, thematically, it's like records need to make sense from beginning to end. And even though I think because of the whole rock grunge movement that was happening in the mid 90s, and we wanted to be kind of that, that rock feel. And we thought it was kind of cool that we had this, rock vibe with the way Morgan, played his guitar and the way the rhythm section was kind of pounding. But then you had like my voice. My voice is not very rock. My voice is not Chris Cornell. I wish it was, but
we all.
Yeah, but it's not. So, but it's got a vibe about it and a sincerity about it that draws people in, which I think, maybe that was there from the beginning, but I can't listen to, like, I listen to Staring at the Sun and I want to turn it off immediately. I'm like, I really sounded like that. But that's life. It's like you take a look at yourself as you sent me a picture.
Yeah, I did.
Maybe you could put it up
last night.
But it's like we look at how we looked, and it's just like, here I am kind of thinking I'm like Mr. Cool Rock guy, and you look like how old were you? 18?
I was 95. I was I was 18.
Yeah. So it's just like one of these things where, like a picture, you look back at them and it's like, why didn't somebody tell me that my hair looked that stupid? And you always think you look better as time goes on. Like right now, you probably think this is the best version of you. And me right now, I probably think it's the best version of me. In 10 years, it'll probably kind of change. And we'll be like, what the hell were we doing on that podcast? We looked silly. But same thing with music,
Well, at least at that point, we met each other in at that time, our most coolest moments, right? I mean,
yeah. At that time, I thought I was super cool.
You were. That was a great show. You guys opened up for Stir, like we talked about that. That was Super Toad in Des Moines.
Yeah.
You guys were fantastic. And
yeah.
I remember the one thing I specifically remember was Honey Weiss was a big thing back at that time. And that was all you were drinking that night. It's the most random memory.
Yeah.
I don't remember the songs. I don't remember that, but I do remember that, which is very strange. So
Sure, a band from St. Louis. I mean, what a great band.
yeah,
There was so much cool music coming out at that time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on the note of staring in the sun, we'd like to see you play a song if you don't mind. We play it under breath. I think we talked about. Does that work?
Yeah, I think if we're gonna play a song off of Staring in the Sun, we play Under Breath. It's a song that we still play 30 years later. So let's do it.
All right, whenever you're ready.
All right, let me grab my guitar. I see life hidden beneath death, caught in lies, spoken under breath. I see hope on a mountain high. There I stand with the will to die. I see life hidden beneath death, caught in lies, spoken under breath. I see hope on a mountain high. There I stand with the will to die. And you say, girl, talking about the past, the mistakes they made, you thought they'd never last. Many had to die. I told them all those lies. Now they wonder why. Yeah, they wonder why. Yeah, they do. I see joy pass by like the wind, sullen glances, asking if we sinned. And I see pride fall down like the rain, desperate voices crying Been talking about the past. The mistakes they made, thought they never last. Many and died. I told them all those lies. Now they wonder why. Oh, oh, oh,
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. That is one that still resonates, like you said, 30 years later.
That's that D chord.
And it was the first song. Yeah, that D chord. That was, like you said, that was your first chord you learned.
Thanks to Morgan.
Well, again, thank you for your time tonight. I think we have opened up a can of worms here. Talked a little bit about how the band formed, kind of set a basis for moving forward here. So again, thank you, Goran, for joining us tonight. We will move on to Songs of Life in episode 3, and a few surprises hopefully along the way. So thank you for your time again.
Anytime, brother. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, appreciate you joining us.
All right, see you.